Have you ever noticed something strange about happiness? The more desperately you pursue it, the more it seems to slip through your fingers. Like trying to catch smoke, the tighter you grasp, the faster it disappears. You set goals thinking they'll make you happy: a better job, a bigger home, a perfect relationship. You achieve them, feel that brief rush of satisfaction, and then emptiness returns. The happiness you expected doesn't last. Instead, you're already looking toward the next goal, the next achievement, the next purchase that promises to finally bring lasting joy. This is the great paradox of happiness, one that Aristotle recognized over 2,300 years ago. What if I told you that the very act of chasing happiness is precisely what prevents you from experiencing it? That this relentless pursuit is actually leading you further away from what you seek? Today, we're going to explore why this happens, why the direct pursuit of happiness so often leaves us feeling empty and unfulfilled. And more importantly, what Aristotle discovered might be the true path to a fulfilled life, one that doesn't involve chasing happiness at all. This isn't just philosophical theory. This is about your life, right now. About why you might feel that gnawing emptiness despite having checked all the boxes society told you would bring fulfillment. About why the happiness industry, with its endless books, courses, and products, keeps growing while actual happiness seems more elusive than ever. I invite you to question everything you've been taught about happiness, to look beyond the superficial understanding that dominates our culture and dive into a deeper wisdom that has endured for millennia. Because once you understand this paradox, everything changes: how you make decisions, what you value, and ultimately, how you experience your one precious life. Let's begin by examining what happens when we make happiness our direct goal, and why this approach is fundamentally flawed. When you wake up in the morning and think, "I want to be happy today," what are you actually seeking? Most of us don't even stop to question what happiness means. We've absorbed cultural messages that equate happiness with pleasure, with positive emotions, with feeling good. And there's nothing inherently wrong with wanting to feel good. The problem lies deeper. Aristotle observed something profound about human psychology. Happiness is not something that can be pursued directly. It's not an activity or a destination. It's what he called a byproduct of living well. When we try to grasp it directly, to manufacture it, we actually push it further away. Think about the last time you told yourself, "I should be happy right now." Perhaps you were on vacation, at a party, or celebrating an achievement. Did that thought actually make you happier? Or did it create pressure, a sense that you weren't feeling what you were supposed to feel? This internal demand to experience happiness often creates the opposite: anxiety, disappointment, even despair. Our modern world has turned happiness into a commodity, something to be purchased, achieved, or consumed. Social media bombards us with images of happy people living their best lives. Advertising promises happiness in the form of products and experiences. The message is clear: if you're not happy, you're failing at life. But Aristotle would recognize this as a profound misunderstanding of human flourishing. He would see our contemporary happiness obsession not as a path to fulfillment, but as a trap that keeps us perpetually dissatisfied. Let me ask you something deeply personal. How many times have you reached a goal that was supposed to make you happy, only to find that the satisfaction quickly faded? How many times have you thought, "When I get this promotion, when I find the right partner, when I lose this weight, then I'll be happy," only to discover that the happiness you expected wasn't waiting for you there? This isn't because there's something wrong with you. It's because you've been sold a fundamental lie about how happiness works. And understanding this lie is the first step toward breaking free from the cycle of pursuit and disappointment that characterizes so many lives. In the next part, we'll explore Aristotle's revolutionary concept of eudaimonia, often mistranslated simply as happiness, but actually representing something far richer and more profound. Because what Aristotle understood, and what our society has forgotten, is that true fulfillment comes not from feeling good, but from being good, from living virtuously in accordance with our deeper nature. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Aristotle didn't use the word happiness as we understand it today. He spoke of eudaimonia, a concept that has no perfect English translation but encompasses ideas of flourishing, well-being, and excellence. Eudaimonia isn't a feeling or an emotional state. It's a way of living, a quality of existence that runs much deeper than momentary pleasure or satisfaction. Modern psychology has caught up to what Aristotle knew millennia ago. Research now distinguishes between hedonic happiness, based on pleasure and positive emotions, and eudaimonic well-being, based on meaning, purpose, and growth. And the evidence is clear. Lives built around hedonic happiness tend to feel empty over time, while those centered on eudaimonic principles lead to deeper fulfillment. But what exactly does eudaimonia involve? For Aristotle, it meant living in accordance with virtue and excellence, fulfilling your potential as a human being, using your unique capacities to their fullest. This isn't about following external rules or meeting society's expectations. It's about becoming the best version of yourself, developing wisdom, courage, temperance, justice, and other qualities that represent excellence in human character. Think of it this way. Happiness isn't something you pursue, it's something you practice. It emerges from how you live, from the choices you make, from the person you become through your actions. It's not about feeling good all the time. It's about living well, even when life is difficult. This distinction revolutionizes how we approach our lives. Instead of asking, "Will this make me happy?" we might ask, "Will this help me live with excellence? Will this allow me to fulfill my potential? Will this contribute to a life well lived?" The answers to these questions often differ dramatically from the answers to the happiness question. A life of excellence frequently involves discomfort, challenge, even suffering. It requires developing discipline, facing fears, and sometimes making sacrifices. None of this sounds like happiness in the conventional sense, and yet, paradoxically, it's exactly what leads to the deeper fulfillment that we're actually seeking. Consider someone who decides to train for a marathon. The process involves physical pain, early mornings, and giving up easier pleasures. If they evaluated each moment by asking, "Is this making me happy right now?" they'd quit immediately. But they endure the difficulty because they're focused on something larger, on becoming a person who can accomplish what once seemed impossible, on developing strength and discipline, on living with excellence. Or think about raising children. Parents don't change diapers, navigate tantrums, or stay up with sick kids because it maximizes their pleasure. They do it because it's part of living well as a parent, because it contributes to the flourishing of someone they love, because it allows them to express care and commitment, all aspects of human excellence. When we shift our focus from feeling happy to living well, we escape the trap of the happiness paradox. We no longer chase an elusive emotional state. Instead, we engage in the daily practice of excellence, finding fulfillment not in how we feel, but in who we become. But this raises a critical question. What does it mean to live with excellence? How do we determine what constitutes living well for each of us? Aristotle had a profound answer to this question. one that challenges us to look beyond our culture's superficial values and connect with the deeper purpose of human existence. In the next part, we'll explore Aristotle's understanding of human purpose and how connecting with this purpose offers the only reliable path to genuine fulfillment. Because without knowing what humans are for, how can we possibly know what makes a human life good? What are humans for? This question might sound strange in our modern world. We don't typically think of human beings as being for anything. But Aristotle believed that everything in nature has a function, a purpose that defines its excellence. A knife is for cutting, so a good knife cuts well. An eye is for seeing, so a good eye sees clearly. But what about a human being? What is our function, our purpose? For Aristotle, what distinguishes humans from other living things is our capacity for reason, for rational thought. Animals live by instinct and appetite. Plants simply grow and reproduce. But humans can reflect, deliberate, and choose. We can direct our lives according to principles we understand and values we endorse. This rational capacity, Aristotle argued, is our defining feature, and living in accordance with reason is our distinctive function. But reason, for Aristotle, isn't just cold calculation. It includes practical wisdom, the ability to discern what matters, to find the right balance in our lives, to make good judgments about how to act in complex situations. It includes understanding our emotions rather than being controlled by them. And it involves using our minds to discover what truly contributes to human flourishing. When we live according to this deeper rationality, we fulfill our nature as human beings. We live with excellence in the specifically human sense. And from this excellence emerges eudaimonia, not as an emotional high, but as the fullness of a life well lived. Let me make this concrete. Think about someone who lives at the mercy of every impulse and desire, who never reflects on whether their actions are good or meaningful, who pursues pleasure without consideration of consequences. This person isn't exercising what makes them distinctively human, their capacity for reason and reflection. They're living as sophisticated animals, not as excellent humans. Contrast this with someone who develops their mind, who cultivates their character, who reflects on their values and allows those values to guide their actions. This person might go through periods of suffering and struggle, but they're living in accordance with their nature as a rational being. They're fulfilling their human function, and in doing so, they're living a eudaimonic life. This has profound implications for how we approach happiness. If our function as humans is to live according to reason, then our fulfillment comes from developing our rational capacities and using them well, not from accumulating pleasures, possessions, or achievements, but from becoming the kind of person who can think clearly, choose wisely, and act with integrity. But there's a challenge here. In our consumer society, we're constantly encouraged to identify with our desires rather than our capacity for reason. We're told that fulfillment comes from having more, experiencing more, feeling more, not from becoming more. We're pushed toward a life governed by appetite rather than reason, and then we wonder why we feel empty despite having everything we thought we wanted. Aristotle would see this as a fundamental confusion about what humans are for, and therefore about what makes for a good human life. We've mistaken the means, pleasure, comfort, wealth, for the end, living well according to our nature as rational beings. And this confusion lies at the heart of the happiness paradox. But if living according to reason is our function, what specific qualities should we cultivate? What virtues define human excellence? This is where Aristotle's theory of virtue comes in, a practical guide to developing the character that leads to genuine flourishing. Because eudaimonia isn't just an abstract philosophical concept, it's a way of living that each of us can practice day by day. In the next part, we'll explore Aristotle's understanding of virtue and how cultivating these qualities of character offers the path to genuine fulfillment, not because virtues make us feel good, but because they allow us to live with excellence as human beings. Aristotle's approach to virtue is refreshingly practical. He wasn't interested in rigid moral rules or abstract ideals of perfection. Instead, he saw virtue as a kind of skill, the skill of living well. Just as a musician develops the skill of playing beautifully through practice and experience, we develop the skill of living well by cultivating certain qualities of character. What are these qualities? They include courage, temperance, justice, generosity, truthfulness, friendliness, and perhaps most importantly, practical wisdom, the ability to discern what matters in complex situations. These aren't inborn traits. They're habits we develop through choice and practice. We become courageous by acting courageously, generous by practicing generosity, wise by making decisions that exercise our judgment. But here's where Aristotle's approach becomes particularly nuanced. He didn't see virtue as a matter of extremes, of being as courageous or as generous as possible. Instead, he saw it as a matter of finding the right balance, the golden mean between excess and deficiency. Courage, for example, lies between rashness, too much, and cowardice, too little. Generosity lies between wastefulness and stinginess. The virtuous person is the one who finds and maintains this balance, who acts in the right way, at the right time, for the right reasons. This isn't easy. It requires sensitivity to the particular demands of each situation. It requires self-knowledge and self-control. It requires learning from experience and adjusting our behavior over time. In short, it requires precisely the kind of rationality that Aristotle saw as our distinctive human function. But when we develop these virtues, something remarkable happens. We don't just act better, we become better. Our character is transformed. We find ourselves naturally inclined toward excellence, naturally responsive to what each situation requires. And from this transformation of character emerges eudaimonia, not as a reward for virtue, but as its natural expression. Think about someone you know who embodies practical wisdom, someone who consistently makes good decisions, who knows how to navigate complex situations with integrity, who finds the right balance between competing values. This person might not be conventionally happy in every moment. They might face difficulties and challenges like anyone else. But there's a depth to their life, a quality of flourishing that goes beyond momentary ups and downs. They're living well as a human being. And that's what Aristotle means by eudaimonia. Now contrast this with someone who chases happiness directly, who makes decisions based solely on what will maximize their pleasure or minimize their pain. This person might experience moments of intense positive emotion, but over time, their life often feels shallow, disconnected, even meaningless. They're pursuing a shadow of fulfillment rather than the real thing. The difference lies in what these two people are aiming at. The first is focused on becoming excellent as a human being, on developing the virtues that constitute a well-lived life. The second is focused on feeling good, on the emotional state they imagine constitutes happiness. And paradoxically, it's the first who's more likely to experience genuine fulfillment, even though they're not pursuing it directly. This brings us back to the paradox we started with. Happiness disappears when we chase it. But now we can understand why. When we make happiness our goal, we're aiming at an emotional state rather than at living well. We're pursuing a byproduct rather than the activity that produces it. And in doing so, we miss the very thing that would actually fulfill us: the development of virtue, the cultivation of excellence. the living of a genuinely good human life. But this raises a crucial question. If direct pursuit doesn't work, how do we actually cultivate eudaimonia in our lives? What practical steps can we take to live with excellence and experience the deeper fulfillment that comes from it? In the next part, we'll explore specific practices that can help us apply Aristotle's wisdom in our everyday lives, transforming not just how we think about happiness, but how we live. If Aristotle's approach makes sense, if genuine fulfillment comes not from pursuing happiness, but from living with excellence, then we need to radically rethink how we make decisions. Instead of asking, "What will make me happy?" we might ask questions like, "What does excellence look like in this situation? What virtues am I developing through this choice? Am I living in accordance with my nature as a rational being? Will this help me become the kind of person I want to be?" These questions lead us in very different directions than the happiness question. They might lead us to choose difficulty over ease, growth over comfort, meaning over pleasure. They might lead us to invest in relationships that challenge us, work that stretches us, pursuits that demand our full engagement, even when these things don't maximize our immediate positive emotions. But how do we actually make this shift in our daily lives? Here are some practical approaches inspired by Aristotle's insights. First, cultivate self-awareness. Aristotle emphasized the importance of knowing yourself, your strengths, weaknesses, tendencies, and patterns. Without this knowledge, it's impossible to develop virtue or live with excellence. So pay attention to your reactions, reflect on your choices, and be honest about where you fall short. This isn't about self-criticism. It's about the self-knowledge that makes growth possible. Second, surround yourself with examples of excellence. Aristotle believed we learn virtue partly by observing and emulating those who already embody it. Look for people in your life who demonstrate practical wisdom, courage, justice, and other virtues. Notice how they approach decisions and challenges. Let their example inspire and guide you as you develop your own character. Third, practice deliberate choice. Instead of acting on autopilot or following your immediate impulses, pause and reflect before making decisions. Consider what excellence would look like in this situation, what a person of good character would do. Then choose accordingly, not because it will make you happy, but because it represents living well as a human being. Fourth, embrace the middle path. Remember Aristotle's insight that virtue lies in finding the right balance, neither too much nor too little. When faced with a challenge, avoid both extreme reactions and passivity. Look for the response that represents courage without rashness, self-care without selfishness, confidence without arrogance. Fifth, engage in activities for their own sake, not just for external rewards. Aristotle distinguished between activities we perform merely as means to other ends and those we value for themselves. The latter contribute more directly to eudaimonia. So ask yourself, what activities do I find inherently valuable, worth doing even if they led to nothing else? Make these central to your life. Sixth, cultivate deep friendships. For Aristotle, friendship wasn't just a pleasant addition to a good life. It was an essential component. Not the superficial connections that dominate social media, but relationships of mutual virtue and goodwill, where each person helps the other become better. Invest in these friendships as a crucial part of living well. Seventh, develop your unique capacities. While Aristotle emphasized reason as our shared human function, each of us also has distinctive gifts and talents. Living well means identifying and developing these capacities, using them in ways that contribute to your own flourishing and to the good of your community. As you implement these practices, you may notice something surprising. You experience more joy, satisfaction, and yes, even happiness. Not because you're pursuing these feelings directly, but because they emerge naturally from living with excellence. You've escaped the happiness paradox by focusing not on being happy, but on being good, on living a life worthy of a human being. But there's another dimension to this approach that's particularly relevant in our uncertain times. When we build our lives around the pursuit of happiness, understood as positive emotions and pleasant experiences, we become extremely vulnerable to circumstances beyond our control. Illness, loss, economic hardship, or global crisis can shatter this kind of happiness in an instant. In contrast, eudaimonia is remarkably resilient. Because it's based on how we live rather than how we feel, it can persist even through difficulty and suffering. A person who has developed virtue can maintain their integrity, their practical wisdom, their courage in the face of adversity. They can continue to live with excellence even when life is hard, and in doing so, they experience a kind of fulfillment that no external circumstance can take away. This doesn't mean they don't feel pain or grief. It means that beneath these feelings, there's a deeper sense of living well, of being the kind of person who faces challenges with dignity and strength. There's a recognition that human flourishing isn't about having an easy life, but about living a worthy one. In our final section, let's explore how this understanding transforms not just individual lives, but our collective approach to what matters, challenging the assumptions of a society built around the direct pursuit of happiness and pointing toward a different vision of what makes life worth living. We live in a culture obsessed with happiness. Our media, our marketplace, our social spaces all push us toward the direct pursuit of positive emotions. Self-help books promise happiness in 7 easy steps. Advertisements suggest that the right product will make us happier. Social media encourages us to display our best life through carefully curated images of enjoyment and success. But what if our entire approach is backward? What if, as Aristotle suggested, we've been chasing the shadow while missing the substance? What if true fulfillment comes not from feeling happy, but from living well? This isn't just a philosophical question. It has profound implications for how we organize our society, how we measure progress, how we define success. If eudaimonia rather than hedonic happiness is our goal, we might value different things, not just pleasure, comfort, and convenience, but meaning, excellence, and virtue. We might prioritize not just economic growth, but the development of human capacities. We might measure success not by material abundance, but by the quality of character we cultivate. Imagine a world where education focuses not just on imparting information or developing skills for the job market, but on forming excellent human beings, people capable of practical wisdom, ethical discernment, and meaningful contribution. Imagine workplaces that value not just productivity and profit, but the flourishing of those who work there. Imagine communities that create space not just for consumption and entertainment, but for the practices that develop virtue and deepen human connection. This vision challenges us to rethink what we're aiming at, both individually and collectively. It asks us to consider whether our pursuit of happiness, understood as pleasure, positive emotion, or satisfaction of desires, might actually be undermining our deeper flourishing. And it offers an alternative, a life focused not on feeling good, but on being good, on developing the excellences that make us fully human. As you reflect on your own life, consider, what would change if you shifted your focus from pursuing happiness to living with excellence? How might your decisions be different? What values might take precedence? What kind of person might you become? The paradox of happiness tells us that chasing it makes it disappear. But Aristotle's wisdom points to the solution. Stop chasing happiness directly. Instead, live with virtue and excellence. Develop your capacities as a rational being. Cultivate practical wisdom, courage, justice, and other qualities of character. Engage in activities that are inherently valuable. Build relationships based on mutual growth and goodwill. Do these things not because they will make you happy, though they may well do so, but because they constitute living well as a human being. Because they represent excellence in the specifically human sense. Because they allow you to fulfill your nature and function as the kind of being you are. This is eudaimonia, not a feeling to be pursued, but a quality of life to be practiced. And in this practice, paradoxically, you may find the deeper fulfillment that happiness chasing can never provide. So I leave you with a question. Are you ready to stop pursuing happiness and start practicing it instead? Are you willing to focus not on how you feel, but on who you are becoming? Are you prepared to embrace the truth that Aristotle recognized millennia ago? That true fulfillment comes not from chasing happiness, but from living with excellence? The choice is yours. But if you're tired of the endless pursuit that never quite delivers what it promises, if you're ready for a deeper kind of fulfillment, Aristotle's ancient wisdom might offer exactly what you've been seeking all along. Let me know in the comments. What area of your life would change most if you focused on excellence rather than on feeling happy? What virtue do you most want to develop? Your insights might help others on this same journey from happiness chasing to true flourishing. And don't forget to watch the next video, where we'll explore how this wisdom applies to specific challenges in modern life. The conversation continues, and I'd love for you to be part of it, Crip.